My name is Angela J. Kozlowski. I'm 31, and I was halfway through debugging a cluster mess of legacy code when I checked my apartment security feed and saw my parents letting themselves in. Normal Wednesday afternoon, right? I'd given them a spare key for emergencies, except my dad was holding a tape measure. I watched through my phone as he started measuring my walls, not just casually looking around, actively measuring, like this was a job. My mom was taking notes on her phone, doing that thing where she tilts her head and squints like she's imagining new furniture. Then my younger brother Cody walked in behind them like he owned the place. He was smirking. "This is perfect," Cody said, dropping onto my leather couch and putting his feet on my coffee table. "Way better than that dump I've been crashing at. And Angela's never even here anyway, always at the office." My mom nodded along, still taking notes. "We'll need to move the desk out of the second bedroom. That can be Cody's room. Angela can work from the office like everyone else." I just stared at my screen like my brain refused to translate what I was hearing into reality. My dad measured the doorways, the hallway, the whole 9 yards, like he was preparing for movers. "Once Cody's stuff is moved in, Angela won't make a scene. She'll understand family comes first. We just need to do it while she's in San Francisco for that conference next month." I sat there at my desk watching these people plot to steal my apartment in real time, and I started laughing. Not the normal kind. That dead, cold laugh that makes your coworkers glance over like you've finally snapped. My business partner, Scott, looked up from his monitor with this confused, cautious expression, like he wasn't sure whether to ask if I was okay. Maybe he should have been concerned, because I'd just watched my family plan a hostile takeover of my home. And instead of feeling shocked or hurt, I felt something else entirely. Relief. Because now I had them all on camera, and I was about to make them regret every single choice that led to this moment. See, I'm a software architect. I own 30% of a startup that just got Series B funding. I make good money, real good money. And 6 months ago, after my mom borrowed my grandfather's vintage Rolex from my apartment, the only thing I had from my dad's father, who actually gave a damn about me, I installed a full security system. Cameras, motion sensors, the works. Found that Rolex 3 weeks later on Cody's wrist in an Instagram photo. He told his friends he bought it with his business earnings. Cody's business earnings consisted of whatever scheme he was currently failing at, while mom and dad funded his lifestyle. I've been documenting everything since then, every conversation, every time they chose Cody over me, every dismissive comment about how I should help family while Cody bled them dry, and now they just handed me enough evidence to bury them all without even realizing it. I texted Cody, "Hey, want to grab dinner this weekend? Been too long." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. I could practically see the group chat forming in his head, the quick calculation, the assumption that I was still the same person who swallowed everything and smiled anyway. "Yeah, sounds good," he wrote back. "Mom and dad free too." "Sure," I replied. "Bring everyone. I'll cook at my place Saturday." I had 4 days to prepare, 4 days to set the trap. And Cody, that smug jerk, was already acting like he'd won. I grew up in Seattle as the older child of Philip and Janet Kozlowski. Dad ran a successful import business. Mom managed rental properties they owned. We had money. We had a nice house in Bellevue. We had everything except I didn't have parents who saw me. I had investors who stopped investing the moment Cody was born. I was 8 when my brother arrived. And I went from firstborn to forgotten overnight, the responsible one, the one who didn't need help because I was so capable for my age. Funny how an 8-year-old becomes self-sufficient when nobody's watching anymore. Cody got basketball camp while I was told sports were a waste of time. He got a brand new Audi for his 16th birthday while I worked at Best Buy to buy my own used truck. I got into MIT and they suggested state school would be more practical. Cody barely graduated high school and they celebrated like he'd cured cancer. They bought him a condo near UW even though he dropped out after 1 semester. I worked my way through MIT, through years of grinding at tech companies, through building my own startup. 3 years ago, I bought my apartment in downtown Seattle, a corner unit with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay, the whole flex. It was my proof that I didn't need their approval or their money. I gave them the spare key because some pathetic part of me still wanted them to be proud of me. That key was about to cost them everything. The day after I watched them measure my furniture, Cody texted me, "Hey, sis, need to ask you something important." I smiled at my phone like he'd just walked into a room with a hidden camera. Sure, I typed. Why don't you all come over Saturday? I'll make that Korean BBQ you guys like. I spent the next 4 days preparing, but not food. I was organizing evidence, financial records, every loan I'd given Cody that he never repaid, screenshots of the 7 different ventures my parents funded for him that all failed, bank statements proving I paid for family dinners, vacations, gifts, while Cody contributed nothing and took everything. And while I was building my folders, I kept replaying the security footage in my head, my dad measuring my hallway like my life was a storage unit he could reassign. Saturday was coming. They thought they were walking into dinner. I was setting a stage. Saturday was coming fast, and I could feel it like pressure in my jaw every time I looked at my phone. Cody kept texting me casual nonsense, little confidence pings, like he was testing whether I was still the same sister who would fold if he pushed hard enough. My mom sent a cheerful message about what wine to bring. My dad asked what time to show up. They sounded so normal it almost made me sick, like they hadn't been on camera plotting to rearrange my entire life. I told Scott I was hosting family dinner, and he gave me that look, the one that said he knew it was never just dinner with my family. He didn't ask questions. He just said, "Want me to stay on standby?" I smiled and told him it was handled. But as soon as he turned back to his screen, my smile dropped. Because the truth was, I'd been handling them my whole life, and I was tired. I spent those 4 days doing what I do best, building systems, designing outcomes, predicting failure points. I didn't just collect proof, I organized it so anyone could read it and see the pattern, the transfers, the texts, the dates, the receipts. I had screenshots of Cody's business plans that were basically buzzwords stitched together like a scam quilt. I had bank statements that showed my parents wiring him money right after telling me they were tight this month. I had a spreadsheet of the $73,000 Cody borrowed from me over 6 years. Not a dollar repaid. I had another line for my parents, $45,000 in temporary loans, always accompanied by guilt, always paired with some speech about loyalty. And as I built the case, I kept thinking about that Rolex, my grandfather's Rolex, the only thing in my apartment that had ever felt like unconditional love. I remembered the day Mom asked to borrow it for a dinner party. She promised she'd return it the next morning. She didn't. 3 weeks later, I saw it on Cody's wrist in a photo, flashing it like he'd earned it. He'd captioned it with some smug nonsense about leveling up. I still remember the way my stomach turned when I realized my family didn't just undervalue me, they monetized me. That night I installed the cameras. I told myself it was for safety. But deep down, I knew it was for proof. For the day they crossed a line so cleanly, there would be no pretending it didn't happen. And now that day was here. Saturday morning, I cleaned my apartment like I was preparing a showroom. Not because I cared what they thought, but because I wanted everything to look sharp when the moment snapped. Floor-to-ceiling windows, city light, that clean, expensive quiet. My apartment had been my sanctuary, my proof. The last thing they hadn't managed to take from me. I went out and bought good meat, the kind Cody liked to brag about eating, even when he couldn't afford it. I set the table. I lit a candle. I made the space feel safe, normal, like they could relax, like they could think they were in control. In my home office, the folders sat in neat stacks. The trap, evidence on top, context underneath, receipts at the bottom. I even printed copies because I'd learned people like my parents don't respect reality unless you put it in their hands. My mom could deny a text message. She couldn't deny a bank transfer. My dad could talk his way out of a conversation. He couldn't talk his way out of audio of his own voice plotting behind my back. Cody's girlfriend Nicole was the variable I wasn't announcing. She was a quiet storm that would hit them when they least expected it. She'd reached out to me weeks ago through LinkedIn with this polite professional message, like she was contacting a colleague, not the sister of the guy draining her life. She told me Cody had been using her credit cards, 3 maxed out cards, about $40,000. He told her it was their investment, a guaranteed opportunity, crypto education, course sales, networking. Meanwhile, he was buying bottle service and designer clothes and posing like a trust fund kid. Nicole wasn't stupid. She didn't reach out because she wanted drama. She reached out because she was desperate, and she'd started realizing Cody's stories didn't add up. He told her I'd never worked a real day in my life, that I was spoiled, that I was jealous. He told my parents Nicole's family was wealthy and he was networking. Lies in every direction like a spider web designed to keep everyone from comparing notes. But Nicole had receipts, and she was smart enough to know I might actually listen. When she told me Cody had started listing my apartment as his business address for his LLC without asking, my calm turned into something colder. Because that wasn't just betrayal. That was danger. That tied his mess to my home. Mail, legal documents, potential fraud, all connected to my property. So when I invited everyone to dinner, I invited Nicole too, and she agreed. Not because she wanted to reconcile, because she wanted the truth to have witnesses. At 5:45, I checked the security feed again. Old habit. Then I checked my reflection in the mirror. I looked calm, put together. Like this was just another Saturday night, but my eyes didn't match the rest of my face. My eyes looked like someone who'd finally decided she wasn't going to beg for love anymore. At 6 on the dot, the doorbell rang. I opened the door and put on my warmest smile, the one my mother loved, because she assumed it meant she still had access to me. Mom stepped inside with drinks. Dad walked in with that familiar authoritative posture, already scanning the space like he was assessing value. Cody followed with that grin, already acting like he lived here. And behind him came Nicole. She met my eyes and gave the smallest nod, just enough to confirm she was ready. Cody clapped his hands like he was the host. "Angela, this place looks great," he said, dropping onto my couch, exactly like he had on camera. "You keeping it clean for once." I smiled back. Special occasion. My mom headed straight to the kitchen like she had ownership rights. "You should really get better knives, sweetie. These are dull." I looked at her calmly. "I like them sharp enough to cut through nonsense, but thanks for the feedback." She blinked like she wasn't sure if I'd insulted her. Dad chuckled like it was a joke. Cody laughed like I was still harmless. Nicole stayed quiet, watching everything. We ate. Cody dominated the conversation like always, bragging about his latest business opportunity, talking about investors lining up, talking about how he was about to blow up. Dad nodded along like he was listening to the next tech visionary. Mom kept refilling Cody's glass like he was the hero of the family. Nicole sat with her hands folded, eyes steady, jaw tight. I let it go on. I let the confidence build. I let them forget they were walking into a trap. Then I set my chopsticks down and looked at Cody. "So," I said lightly, like it was small talk, "how's the apartment hunting going?" Cody's grin faltered for half a second. He glanced at my parents. Dad jumped in smoothly. "Maybe you could help your brother out. You've got that extra bedroom collecting dust." "The office," Mom added quickly. "You could work from the company office like everyone else. Cody needs a stable address for his business. Family helps family, Angela." I took a slow sip of my drink and let the silence stretch just long enough to make them uneasy. "That's interesting," I said, "because I could have sworn I saw you all in here earlier this week measuring my walls, planning where to put Cody's stuff without asking me, without even telling me." The silence that followed was beautiful. Cody's smirk evaporated. Dad's jaw tightened. Mom opened her mouth like she was about to laugh it off. Nicole's eyes sharpened. I leaned back in my chair, still calm, still smiling. "I have security cameras," I continued. "Full coverage." Dad's face twitched. "You said those were just for the front door." I lied, I said simply. And Nicole's hand tightened around her glass, like she could feel the moment coming. Because dinner wasn't dinner anymore. Dinner was evidence. The room didn't explode right away. It tightened. Like oxygen had been sucked out, but no one wanted to be the first to admit they couldn't breathe. Dad cleared his throat. "Angela, you're taking this out of context." "Context," I repeated softly. "That's a good word." I reached for my phone on the table and tapped twice. The audio file loaded instantly. Dad's voice filled the room, clear and unmistakable. "Once Cody's stuff is moved in, Angela won't make a scene. She'll understand family comes first. We just need to do it while she's in San Francisco next month." Mom's fork froze midair. Cody's face drained of color. Dad tried to grab control. "You recorded us." "You were in my apartment," I replied evenly, "using a key I trusted you with." Mom's voice rose. "We weren't stealing anything. We were helping your brother. He needs stability." "He needs accountability," I said. "There's a difference." Cody slammed his hand on the table. "This is insane. You're spying on family now." "No," I said calmly. "I'm protecting my property." Nicole shifted in her seat. I caught her eye. It was time. "Speaking of property," I added lightly, like this was still dinner conversation. "Cody, want to explain why you registered your LLC to my apartment address?" The color returned to his face, but not confidence. Panic. "What are you talking about?" Kozlowski Capital Ventures, LLC, I said clearly. Registered 3 months ago. My address, without my consent. Dad looked at him sharply. Cody. It's just paperwork, Cody snapped. It's not a big deal. It is when federal mail for your business is tied to my property, I replied. It's a very big deal. Mom looked between us like she was watching two strangers argue. Angela, you're overreacting. Your brother's building something important. Important, Nicole said quietly. Every head turned toward her. Cody shot her a warning look. Nicole, don't. But she did. She pulled a thick folder out of her bag and set it on the table with steady hands. He maxed out 3 of my credit cards, she said. $40,000. Silence fell so hard it felt physical. Dad blinked. What? He told me it was an investment, Nicole continued. Crypto education. Guaranteed returns. Instead, he was paying for bottle service and designer clothes. She flipped the folder open and spread out the statements across my dining table. Look at the dates. Look at the charges. Not a single legitimate business expense. Cody stood abruptly, chair scraping against hardwood. That's not... I can explain. Explain what? I cut in smoothly. The clubs, the cash withdrawals, the marketing events that were really just Instagram photos. Mom's hands started shaking. Cody, tell me this isn't true. Nicole's voice hardened. He told me Angela was a spoiled trust fund kid who never worked. He said he was networking for big opportunities. Meanwhile, I was working double shifts as a nurse while he drained my accounts. Dad's controlled posture cracked. Cody, is this true? It's not what it looks like, he muttered. It looks like fraud, I said. And that's before we even talk about the FTC investigation. Dad's head snapped toward me. What investigation? I walked to my office calmly and came back with another folder. I dropped it onto the table. Public filings, Jim, I said. 3 civil complaints, deceptive business practices, and once Nicole's lawyer files, it escalates. Nicole nodded. The paperwork's already drafted. Cody's breathing turned shallow. You two set me up. No, I said quietly. You set yourself up. Mom burst into tears. Angela, please, he's your brother. And I'm your daughter, I replied, not raising my voice. Remember. Dad looked like he was trying to regain control of a boardroom meeting that had gone sideways. This is still family. We can fix this privately. Privately, I repeated, like you plan to privately move him into my home. Cody's anger came back, sharp and defensive. You've always hated that they love me more. There it was, the script he'd been running his whole life. I don't hate you, I said calmly. I just stopped subsidizing you. Nicole's jaw tightened. She looked at him like she finally saw him clearly. I leaned forward slightly, voice steady. You've borrowed $73,000 from me over 6 years. Not $1 paid back. Mom and Dad borrowed another $45,000. All documented. Meanwhile, you're running a fake business, using my address, and planning to move into my apartment without asking. I let that sit. The only sound was Mom crying. Dad tried one more time. Angela, you're tearing this family apart. No, I said softly. You did that when you decided I'd always tolerate it. Cody grabbed his jacket, face twisted with fury. You think you're so smart with your job and your fancy apartment? You've always been smug. Better smug than fraudulent, I replied. Nicole stood up too, but she didn't follow him immediately. She looked at my parents instead. You enabled him, she said plainly. You never questioned him because it was easier than questioning yourselves. Dad had no response. I stood and walked to the door, opening it without drama. Leave your key on the table. Mom looked shattered. Dad looked humiliated. Cody looked like he wanted to flip the table. This isn't over, he hissed at me as he stepped past. For me, I said quietly, it is. Nicole paused at the door and met my eyes. She mouthed, thank you. I nodded once. She deserved her money back, and she was going to get it. The door closed. The lock clicked. And for the first time in my life, my apartment felt fully mine. But I knew this wasn't the end. Because people like Cody don't collapse quietly. They scramble. And when they scramble, they get dangerous. The silence after they left felt heavier than the confrontation itself. I stood in my living room for a long moment, staring at the city lights reflecting off Elliott Bay, replaying every expression, every crack in their composure. For once, I hadn't begged. I hadn't defended myself. I had just presented facts and let gravity do the rest. By Monday morning, my phone had 17 unread texts from my mother. I read the first one. It started with, how could you humiliate your brother like that? And ended with, family should handle things privately. I blocked her number before finishing the second message. Then Dad. Then Cody. The silence that followed felt clean. Nicole called that afternoon. Her lawyer had officially filed the civil complaint. Once her documentation merged with mine, something bigger shifted. Cody hadn't just lied, he had built a pattern, and patterns attract attention. By Wednesday, that attention came in the form of federal interest. It turned out the FTC had already been reviewing complaints about Cody's crypto education program. Once Nicole's financial evidence and my documentation about the LLC address hit the right desks, the Department of Justice opened a criminal investigation for wire fraud and mail fraud. My address being tied to his filings became a central piece of their timeline. Scott texted me the news article 2 days later. Local man charged with wire fraud and deceptive crypto scheme. Cody's mugshot stared back at me from my screen, shocked, disbelieving, like consequences were a myth he'd never thought would apply to him. Your brother? Scott asked when I walked into the office. Not anymore, I replied. The online collapse was fast. His Instagram went from luxury shots and fake mentorship quotes to radio silence. Then someone posted the federal complaint. Then Nicole posted a statement about financial abuse. Then former students started commenting. 40 of them, at least. Each one had paid $2,000 for a course that was mostly stolen YouTube content repackaged with buzzwords. The lawsuits multiplied. My parents tried a different angle after that. They sent my Uncle Henry to talk to me. Henry had always been fair, never played favorites. We met at a coffee shop downtown. He asked me to intervene, Henry said bluntly. I told him he was an idiot. I almost smiled. I warned them years ago, he continued. You don't push away the kid who's actually building something real, but they never listened. He slid a business card across the table, his lawyer's contact, in case they escalate. I thanked him and he shook his head. Don't thank me. Just don't let them back in. I didn't intend to. Cody's arraignment came the following Monday. Bail was set at $50,000. My parents used their house as collateral. Their finances started cracking under pressure. 2 rental properties were sold. Dad's business reputation took a hit in the community. I felt nothing. That was the strangest part. No vindication, no guilt, just neutrality. Then the email came. Subject line, we need to talk. It was from Dad, sent from a work address because I had blocked everything else. He wrote about how Cody was facing 3 to 5 years, how restitution could reach $200,000, how Mom's health was suffering, how the community treated them like criminals. Then the pivot. I raised you better than this. Family stands together. I didn't read the whole thing. I forwarded it to Henry with one line. They're still at it. His reply came minutes later. Don't engage. They're desperate. A week later, another email, this time from Cody. He blamed me for everything. Said I sabotaged his business. Said I was jealous growing up. Said I ruined his relationship with Nicole. Said I'd always been cold. The message spiraled until the last paragraph. I know your routines. Don't think you're untouchable. That line sat differently. That line wasn't self-pity. It was a threat. I forwarded both emails to my lawyer. Within 72 hours, we had a temporary restraining order filed. Combined with the security footage from their earlier trespass and the escalating harassment, it moved quickly. Cody was ordered to stay 500 feet away from my residence and workplace and cease all contact. Mom tried one last message through her work email. It was guilt-soaked and frantic. The lawyer responded formally, making it clear any further communication would be documented as harassment. 2 weeks later, the restraining order became permanent. I thought that would end it. 3 weeks after the order went into effect, Scott called me while I was still at the office. You need to get home. What's wrong? Cody's in your building lobby. My pulse spiked, but my voice stayed steady. Call security. They already did. He's claiming there's a family emergency. I drove faster than I should have. When I pulled into the garage, I called building security. Andrew, the night guard, sounded calm but alert. He's refusing to leave, says he just needs 5 minutes. He's violating a court order, I said. Call the police. They're on the way. I stayed in my car and listened through the phone. I could hear Cody's voice echoing in the lobby. She's my sister. I just need 5 minutes. Andrew responded professionally. Sir, you are violating a restraining order. Cody's tone shifted from pleading to angry in seconds. Fine, let them arrest me. At least I'll get to see her face. 8 minutes later, police arrived. They escorted him out. An incident report was filed. I sat in my car for 20 minutes after he left. Not because I was afraid of him specifically, because I was afraid of desperation. Desperate people do reckless things. That night, I double-checked my cameras and security settings. The violation cost him. His bail was revoked pending trial. His attorney scrambled for a plea deal. He eventually accepted one. 18 months federal prison, 5 years supervised release, Full restitution required. My parents would spend years paying off his debt. I would spend those years living my life without them. 15 months later, he was released early for good behavior. Henry warned me he might try to reach out. I ignored it, until one afternoon when Scott walked into my office and said quietly, "Angela, your brother's in the lobby." I looked at the clock. 2:40 p.m. Tell security I'll come down. But he's not coming up here. This time, I was ready. I took the elevator down slowly, not because I was nervous, but because I refused to rush for him anymore. When the doors opened into the lobby, I saw him immediately. Prison had hollowed him out. The arrogance wasn't gone, but it was thinner now, stretched over something brittle. "Angela," he said when he saw me. "Thanks for coming down." "You have 5 minutes," I replied. He glanced around the lobby like he was trying to assess my world again. Clean floors, glass walls, security desk 10 feet away. This wasn't my apartment. This was my professional life, and he didn't belong in either. "You're doing well," he said, nodding toward the offices upstairs. "Scott mentioned the company's grown." 4 minutes. He inhaled sharply and launched into the apology. He said he'd messed up, said prison changed him, said he'd been in some rehabilitation program, said he finally understood accountability. It lasted about 90 seconds. "Stop," I said. He blinked. "What?" "You're sorry you got caught, not sorry for what you did." His jaw tightened. "That's not fair." "It's accurate." He tried again, softer this time. "Angela, I had time to think in there. I know I hurt people. I want to make it right." "You can make it right by staying away from me." His eyes flickered, and for a split second I saw it. The flash of resentment he couldn't hide. The same resentment from dinner night. The same from childhood when I got into MIT and he got applause for mediocrity. "You've always thought you were better," he muttered. "No," I said calmly. "I just stopped accepting less." He shifted tactics. "Mom and Dad are broke. They're drowning. They used everything to cover restitution. You think that doesn't matter. I think that's the consequence of years of enabling you." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I can't get a job. No one hires someone with federal fraud on their record. I'm stuck living at home like I'm 16 again. You could help." "There it is," I said quietly. "What?" "You didn't come to apologize. You came to ask." His expression hardened. "You have money. You have everything. I'm your brother." "You're someone who shares my DNA," I corrected. "That's it." He laughed bitterly. "So that's it. You're just cutting me off forever." "I already did." He looked around again, maybe realizing security was watching, maybe realizing he had no leverage left. "You're cold." "Yes." "Prison changed me. Prison removed your access to victims," I said. "That's not growth. That's containment." His mask slipped then. The anger came fully forward. "You ruined my life," he snapped. "You could have handled that privately. You made it public. You worked with Nicole. You handed everything to the feds." "I handed them documentation," I said evenly. "They did the rest." He clenched his fists. "You're going to end up alone. All this success means nothing without family." I smiled faintly. "I built this without family." He tried one last move. "Are you really going to hate me forever?" "I don't hate you," I replied. "I just don't think about you." That hit harder than anything else. His face shifted from rage to something like panic, because indifference is worse than hatred. Hatred means there's still emotion to manipulate. "You can't say that," he insisted. "I'm your brother." "And here's what's going to happen," I said calmly. "You're going to leave. You're never going to show up at my office or apartment again. You're not going to email, call, or send anyone to contact me. If you do, I will contact your probation officer immediately." That last sentence changed his posture instantly. He knew I would. "You wouldn't," he said, but there was no confidence behind it. "I would." For a moment, he looked like he might explode. Then he grabbed his jacket. "You think you've won," he muttered. "You think this makes you powerful." "No," I said. "Boundaries make me safe." He stared at me for a long second, searching for some crack in my composure. There wasn't one. "Screw you," he said finally. "Good luck rebuilding," I replied. He turned and walked out of the building, shoulders stiff, steps sharp. I watched him cross the street and get into a beat-up car. It drove away slowly, like even his exit didn't know where to go. I rode the elevator back upstairs. Scott was waiting near my desk. "He going to try again?" "No," I said. "He knows I'll have him arrested." Scott nodded. "Good. We've got that investor call in 30. I'm ready." And I was. That was the strange, quiet truth of it all. My startup was thriving. My equity was real. I had a partner who respected me. I had a life built from discipline instead of manipulation. I was dating a man named Daniel, a product manager at Amazon, who came from a healthy family and couldn't fully understand mine, but didn't try to fix it either. He just listened. He chose to be there without obligation. Cody would probably try again someday, through a distant relative, through a random message, through guilt, through desperation. And I would ignore it, because the lesson wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about humiliation. It wasn't even about justice. It was about understanding that some people will drain you, blame you, and still believe you owe them more. The only way to win is to become unreachable, build a life they can't access, install cameras, install boundaries, and thrive so completely that their chaos can't touch you. My apartment was still mine. My company was still growing. My name was still clean. And for the first time in my life, I didn't need their approval. I had something better: peace.